Welcome, everybody. I'm Roseanne Worley, new superintendent for Lassen Volcanic National Park. I'll be presenting today along with Tessa Moran, a project manager who works for the National Park Service out of the Denver Service Center Planning Division. That office is comprised of NPS staff who support park planning needs across the agency. And we also have some additional folks from her office assisting with the production on this call. We have with us Mark Koheiser, Alan Cardenas, and Hillary Conley from that office, and they will guide us through the Q&A session at the end. In addition, we have Lassen Park subject matter experts who will participate during the Q&A session. For this morning's call, we have Nancy Nordenston, our Chief of Cultural and Natural Resources, Sean Gibson, our Park Archaeologist and National Historic Preservation Act Coordinator, Brian Rasmussen, Park Geologist and National Environmental Policy Act Coordinator, Joe Pettigrew, Chief of Facilities, and Sierra Kuhn, Chief of Interpretation and Education. Okay, next slide. Again, welcome and thank you for engaging with this process. Today we'll be sharing information from our draft Manzanita Lake Development Concept Plan Environmental Assessment, and it is in a key stage of our planning process where we formally collect your feedback about the plan. We want you to be involved in this. We want to hear from you, your concerns, your ideas for solutions, and this will ultimately help inform the possible solutions that we consider. Throughout this entire planning process, we are committed to gathering input from gateway communities, partners, members of the public, along with state, local, and tribal governments. We will be placing the link in the Q&A section of this presentation. This is where you can go to provide formal comments. In addition, as we present, I invite you all to add your questions as they come up, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. Next slide. And I'm passing it off to Tessa right now.
Great. And before we begin the presentation, we'll show a couple of slides to ensure folks are able to engage with the Teams platform during this meeting. So this slide shows what your screen should look like and the functionalities available. If you click on the bubble with the question mark icon on the top right corner of your screen, that will allow you to submit a question to the planning team. You can submit a question at any time during the presentation, and we will answer questions at the end after the presentation. We highly encourage folks to submit questions as they come to you. This next slide shows some additional features. On the bottom left corner of your screen, you can adjust the sound using the microphone icon. And on the bottom right corner of your screen, you can turn on closed captions and change the language as needed. We also have a live captioner on this call, and we will drop the information on how to access those captions into the chat now. For your awareness, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the project webpage in the coming weeks. Next, I'll provide an overview of the presentation. We will start off with a park introduction, then discuss project context and goals, describe the NPS preferred alternative, and end with the planning process and your critical role. As mentioned, at the end, we will make space for questions and answers. Please submit questions via the chat function at any time during this presentation. Next, I will hand it over to Rose.
Thanks, Tessa. So the first section is our introduction. So on the next slide, as many people know, Lassen is a wonderful park to visit, and hopefully folks on this call have been here before. Lassen Volcanic National Park was established in 1916, one of our first national parks in the system. It was established to preserve over 106,000 acres of dynamic volcanic landscapes, diverse resources, scenic values, and outstanding wilderness character, allowing for exceptional experiences and opportunities for the enjoyment and benefit of the public. Next slide. Park significant statements express, these park significant statements express why Lassen Volcanic National Park resources and values were important enough to merit National Park Unit designation. So the top 4 that have been developed for this particular park are that there are very few places on Earth with such concentrated diversity of volcanic features that make up this park. All 4 primary types of volcanoes are found on Earth are represented at Lassen: shield, composite, cinder cone, and plug dome. We are also located at a crossroads of 3 biological provinces, which provides a biologically rich transition zone between the Cascade Range, the Sierra Nevada Range, and the Great Basin Desert. The park also encompasses rich archaeological and historic sites, which furthers our understanding of the people who have lived in and around this region for thousands of years. And last but not least, our wilderness designation provides outstanding opportunities to experience solitude, clean air, and natural scenery. Along with these wilderness experiences, our park provides diverse recreational opportunities, and the Manzanita Lake developed area is one of the most popular front country sites enjoyed in the park. Next slide. So as most folks probably know, circled here, Manzanita Lake is located in the northwest corner of the park, just off Highway 44, and it has become the primary entrance for visitors entering the park. Between 2021 and 2022, visitation through this location increased 29%, from approximately 187,000 to 244,000. As one of the most heavily visited areas in the park, this area encompasses the largest campground, a museum, a visitor contact station, a bookstore, amphitheater, parking, and access to multiple trails. It also has a concessions operation that includes a store, cafe, rental cabins, and paddlecraft rentals. Next slide. So moving into our next section is the project context and goals. Next slide. Overall, we're looking to improve the Manzanita Lake visitor facilities while respectfully rehabilitating historic structures to accommodate growing visitation and enhancing visitor experiences while accounting for future needs. Next slide. The plan is needed to improve inadequate facilities in the Manzanita Lake developed area, including but not limited to the campground and its associated infrastructure, utility systems in the day use area, which includes the boat launch, picnic area, and primary Manzanita Lake trailhead. It's also needed to restore and rehabilitate historic structures threatened by overuse and degradation and the consideration of adaptive reuse where appropriate. We're also looking to implement physical and programmatic accessibility requirements identified in the self-evaluation transition plan that was developed and explore opportunities to incorporate additional non-required improvements. We're also looking at easing roadway and parking congestion and safety concerns and improve visitor circulation and flow by enhancing connectivity between parking, the Loomis Plaza, the day use area, and the campground within this developed area. Currently, there is significant congestion around the camper store, creating a potentially unsafe environment for visitors. So the plan also proposes incorporating a multi-use trail to separate out the vehicular traffic from the pedestrian traffic around these areas. And the plan also includes widening the entrance station area to ease the long wait times for entering the park. Some of the other needs are to improve recreation and visitor areas while protecting the lake's natural resources and habitats from the increased visitor use impacts and a changing climate. Elaborate social trails have been evolving, and the park is seeing a decline in woody plant species in the area. So there's a need for aiding with that. We're also looking to provide adaptive opportunities for modernization, so technological advancements in that area. And then we're also looking at conceptually addressing the resource impacts associated with needed lake dam improvements. We will, however, address the specific engineering improvements to the dam and dike in a separate future planning effort as funding becomes available. So next slide. So which is the NPS preferred alternative. Next slide. Within the plan, in the draft plan for your review, there's desired conditions that have been spelled out. And so the following areas are our main areas that we focused on for our desired conditions, which relate to visitor experience, cultural natural resources, and overall operations. And these desired conditions help park managers address the question of what are we trying to achieve? Next slide. So our no action alternative called out in the plan would just be to continue to manage park resources under current policy and guidance. And the NPS preferred alternative is the proposal the NPS intends to take action on. Next slide. These next few slides will present our preferred alternative and the actions we would take at each location, and looks at upgrades for this area holistically. Our first stop is the Lassen Crossroads, just off Highway 44 before the entrance station. This location would provide outdoor year-round information displays to help orient visitors to the area. It would include a new electric vehicle charging station as well as a vault toilet with year-round access. And we would also look at developing a trailhead to formalizing the trailhead to the Nobles Emigrant Trail by constructing a new unpaved trail to connect the trailhead to the existing trail, as shown on the map here. Next slide. The entrance station would remain in its current location, but we would reconfigure it to allow for 2 inbound lanes and 1 outbound lane. We would also formalize the pull-off with views of Manzanita Lake to include short-term parking and informational signage. At Reflection Lake, as you can see part of it on the right side of this slide, we would widen this trail to 4 feet across and maintain a natural firm surface, along with removing tree roots and other barriers to improve accessibility. This slide also shows part of the Manzanita Lake Trail, which we will go over on a future slide. Next slide. So overall, improvements to parking and circulation would include reestablishing a parking lot east of the main parking area to accommodate an additional 40 vehicles, including 3 electric vehicle charging stations, 1 double vault toilet, and picnic tables. This area is indicated in the upper right corner of this particular slide. And this parking lot would also be the trailhead for the Chaos Crags Trail and be also within walking distance to both the Loomis Plaza and Manzanita Lake. We're also looking to provide an accessible multi-use paved path to connect visitors from the parking areas to the greater Manzanita Lake developed area. So this dotted orange line in the center of the map is where that would go. And this pathway would provide access between the parking lots, the Loomis Plaza, the Manzanita day use area, and all of the campground loops, and all the way down to the night sky program area. And we would also employ techniques to reduce speed along the entrance highway near the crosswalk to Loomis Plaza, which would also be installed. For example, increased signage, rumble strips, and/or speed bumps. Next slide. So at Loomis Plaza, we would be looking at including a seasonal contact station at the parking lot for quick orientation and information, improving the kiosk and wayfinding in and around the plaza, a formal interpretation area and temporary shade structure for general and tribal interpretation, picnic tables, water filling stations, improved accessible route to the Loomis residents, an outdoor recreation access route, and interpretation of the seismograph building. This slide also shows an additional portion of the Reflection Lake Trail that I mentioned earlier, along with the proposed routes to the additional parking and access to the Manzanita Lake Loop Trail. Next slide. So moving on to the day use and Manzanita Lake areas, there would be the multi-use paved path, which is connecting from Loomis Plaza to this day use area. So that is in the middle part of this particular slide. We're looking to replace the existing boat launch and with a prefabricated accessible launch, and also installing an accessible fishing pier to the northwest of the boat launch. We would need to reroute approximately 400 feet of the Manzanita Lake Trail along the shoreline to help reduce user conflicts. Overall, the Manzanita Lake Loop Trail improvements would include accessibility improvements, but it would remain a natural surface. We'd also look to improve wayfinding and interpretive signage along the trail, and as well as establish an interpretive water trail on the lake. And we're also looking at installing a boat cleaning station at the current RV dump location, which is just off to the right of this particular map. The point of that is to help prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. And then also on this slide is our amphitheater and living history area. So you'll see that noted on the right side of the slide. Improvements to this area include connectivity between the amphitheater and the campground with an accessible route at the front of the amphitheater. Upgrades to the amphitheater with night sky friendly lighting, auto visual equipment, seating, and accessibility. Hardening of the trail surface near the living history program area would also be included, and that area is shown in the upper right side of the slide. Okay, next slide. So I think this is our final map, and this is the campground as well as the night sky program area. So we're looking to relocate this particular road into the campground to the far east side of this area, and relocate the parking lot to the west of the new road alignment. And we're wanting to connect the camper store, day use area, campground, and night sky viewing area with the area-wide multi-use path that I had mentioned on the earlier slides. The rental cabins that you see on here would remain, and we would add additional glamping sites. Loop A of the campground would be retrofitted to accommodate larger RVs, and then Loop D would remain a tent-only site. And we're also looking to formalize the night sky program. And so that program area is towards the bottom area of the slide, would have a multi-use paved accessible route, telescope platforms, and a native plant garden. For some of these options, we would need to do additional compliance and consultation, but that would be conducted following additional design. Okay, next slide. So in addition to some of those improvements, we also wanted to address administrative use in this particular area, and we're looking at doing that in the area north of Highway 89. And that would be used for research, volunteers, and tribal partners. Again, additional compliance for those would be needed on those decisions. And then next slide. And just so as everybody's aware, improvements to the dam itself would have to be analyzed through a separate environmental assessment process, but we would be looking at bringing the dam and dike up to current safety standards, maintaining the connectivity of the loop trail, which would incorporate a pedestrian bridge over the spillway, along with maintaining the current lake level and the current recreational use that exists as we see today. So that wraps up our discussion of the plan, and I will now turn it back over to Tessa to go over the next steps of this process and how you all can participate and provide feedback.
Great, thank you, Rose. Now we will go over the planning process for this project. So this project has two phases as shown on your screen. Phase 1 of this project began back in 2022. During this phase, we set the foundation for the project, analyzed the problems, and came up with preliminary solutions. We shared these preliminary ideas with the public in the summer of 2022. Since then, we have been developing the full plan and initiating appropriate compliance paths for this project. So we are now in phase 2 of this project. And this is where the public has the opportunity to review the draft plan as written and provide feedback on the plan. After this review period, Our team will incorporate public input as appropriate and finalize the plan with a decision document. We want to hear from you all, so we'll now walk you through how to provide input on this plan. So this slide shows what the project homepage looks like. If you go to the link in the chat, this is what you will see. Under the header Document Content, you can download the postcard and you can download the design concept plan and environmental assessment for this project. We highly encourage folks to review the content of the plan prior to providing comments on it. Another really great way to learn more about this plan is to review our story map, which is available if you click on the Links tab on the left-hand side of the screen, and then click on the story map link. We will add this link to our chat now as well, so folks can access this website at your leisure. After reviewing the plan, if you click on the Comment Now button on the left-hand side of your screen, that will allow you to provide official comments on this project. To be most helpful, your comments should address the purpose and need for action, the environmental issues analyzed, and letting us know if there are any inaccuracies in the plan. Comments which are not helpful in this process include those which vote for or against a potential management strategy without giving any reasons why. Comments that agree or disagree with laws, regulation, or NPS policy that we must adhere to. Discuss other projects or other areas that are not relevant to this particular project. Or comments that contain vague language or open-ended questions or statements. So the more specific and detailed you can be in your comments, the most helpful it will be for our team. While we are providing an opportunity for you to ask questions today during this meeting, we highly encourage you to submit comments online for your comments to go on record. We can then use that information to consider if any changes are needed for the final plan before we officially have our decision document. So from now through July 1st, we highly encourage you to provide comments on the draft plan. And you can provide comments at the link shown on your screen, and that is parkplanning.nps.gov/LAVO_DCP_EA. And this is the same link that we are showing in our chat as well. At this time, we will open up the meeting for questions and answers. So for folks who may have joined a little later in the meeting, on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should see an icon that looks like a question mark, and that is the way to provide a question to this planning team. Once you submit a question using the Q&A function of this meeting, that will allow us to see your question and have the opportunity to respond to it. At this time, we are waiting on questions, so we will take a quick break and wait for some questions to roll in before we begin our moderation portion of the meeting, which will be run by Mark. So we will pause for a little bit as some questions roll in here.
And then I'll just add, thank you again, everybody, for attending the call today, and we encourage you to provide feedback. And just to echo what Tessa said, you'll have until July 1st to submit formal comments on the link, and we would love to hear from you and get your input. Thank you so much.